Good morning, everyone. I am Nick Hayes. I am our training deputy to the Kingdom Seneschal, as well as the Southern Regional Seneschal. And our Kingdom Seneschal Beatrix has asked me to present our Seneschal Warranting class this morning. Thank you to Zebeda and my host, and I wish I knew who my host name was right now, for helping us on the technical side. Zebeda will be recording this class for preservation going forward. This class is required viewing for all seneschals and all landed nobles, as well as royalty and anyone who needs to be warranted as a seneschal. It is also just good to know this information. We will be reviewing the Seneschal Handbook, which is in the process of being updated right now. What is presented in this class reflects the latest version of the handbook, which has not technically been signed, but should be signed very soon. So to get started, we're going to try and run through this in less than an hour. Becoming a seneschal, you have to be 18, you have to be a paid SCA member, and you cannot live at the same address from the group's exchequer. We are trying to preserve independence between the seneschal and the exchequer. You also have to attend warranting classes, i.e. this class, for Seneschal Warranting, Financial Policy, which is the Exchequer Warranting, and then our DEIB, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging classes. You have to do those at least every 2 years. I see a hand raised. Okay. We also ask that you have consistent and reliable access to phone and your Kingdom issued email. All of your official communication will be going through your Seneschal email account, or if you are in one of the other offices, that official email. Facebook, while you can have, some conversations via your Facebook Messenger and stuff, remember that those are not preserved, and that makes it difficult going forward. So just being accessible over Facebook or Discord is not sufficient. You need to have a phone number and access to that Kingdom issued email. And you will have your phone number published in the Kingdom newsletter. If you're not comfortable with that, then you can look into getting a Google Voice number or something that can forward to your personal phone number. But do expect that you will have your personal phone number published in the Kingdom newsletter, or whatever phone number that you are accessible by. Expectations: aim to check that Kingdom issued email at least every day or so. That doesn't mean you have to deal with it right then, but that way you can acknowledge, hey, I see this, I'll deal with it this weekend, or this is an emergency. You need to be accessible. You need to be available for phone calls as scheduled by either your uplines or your baronial or group membership. We ask that you are active in your group. You're attending local activities, going to events. You are the legal representative towards your group. So it's a very good idea if you know what's going on in your group. And you'll have to hold a monthly meeting for your officers and your populace. Those could be separate meetings, or they could be together. If you are the seneschal for a barony that has landed nobility, you need to be in good communication with them and have a good relationship with them. And you need to be in good communication with your upline, your regional seneschal, your Kingdom seneschal, the people who you are reporting to. How to apply for an office. This is the information that you have to have. Remember that you do need to be a member to be a seneschal, and we ask that you are a member throughout each warranting period, which is 6 months. So 6 months from today. So if you look and your membership is expiring next month, you need to go ahead and renew that. That way we don't have people becoming ineligible on their warrants halfway through our warranting period. What happens next? you've applied to become a Seneschal, then the Kingdom Seneschal will select the next one. Usually they ask the regional Seneschal to help them. It's reviewed by regional, kingdom, landed nobles, if you have them, and then the current group Seneschal, they get feedback, and the crown will eventually give a final up or down on each applicant. All applications need to be open for 30 days. And after 30 days, then the upline can decide and announce and move forward with the next Seneschal. One of your primary responsibilities as a Seneschal is to promote peace, harmony, and prosperity, all these warm fuzzies. Be kind, be fair. One of the hardest things about being the local Seneschal is you are working with your friends, your enemies, perhaps. You are having to work with people that you know intimately. You don't get that level of detachment. So set aside any of your personal beefs, any of your history with people, and make sure that you're representing the entire group. Always assume, no matter what you say, your words have weight and they may be repeated. They will become public. If you say something snarky, if you say something rude, someone might hear this and, well, that Seneschal said, suddenly you're not just Joe Schmo, you're the Seneschal of the group. If there are people in your group that you cannot deal with fairly, then get a deputy and say, hey, I have a personal issue with this person. I know that I cannot be perceived as being fair with them. If this person has a complaint or has an issue, I'm going to recommend that they speak to you instead, so that we have that level of detachment. Conducting regular meetings. As we said, you have to hold meetings. This means that it's either in person or online or hybrid. I strongly suggest trying to manage a hybrid option if you can, because this means that both you get physically together, everyone gets to see each other's faces, and that's fantastic. But as we learned during our COVID lockdowns, not everyone can drive across town on a random Monday evening or whenever your meeting is, and being able to be involved in your group, even when you physically cannot be there, is very important. These meetings are going to cover officer reports, event planning, demo planning, anything else, whether you are doing a group encampment at an upcoming war. You can talk about these, you can figure out what's going on in the journey. I strongly suggest making an agenda. Share that agenda with your landed nobility ahead of time. Share it with the populace ahead of time. Reach out to your officers, get any new business from them. How are you going to know that your rapier marshal wants to discuss buying new loaner gear if you haven't let them have the opportunity to get onto that agenda? I will be going into a lot more detail about how to conduct meetings and some sample agendas and things in the class at 1 o'clock today. Finances. Finances are very important. Ultimately, money's not your job, but you need to be very aware of what's happening with that money. This is the too deep responsibility between the exchequer and the seneschal. So that means every month they are going to have their reports. They are going to submit to you. You need to look over it. You need to review it for accuracy and completeness. And that's why all seneschals also have to take the exchequer warranting class. You may be able to do both of these jobs, even though you are not doing the activities. You need to take a look at it. We also have a financial committee for each group, and by corporate law, financial committee comprises of the warranted seneschal, the warranted exchequer, and landed nobility, or obviously if you don't have landed nobility for your group, it does not have landed nobility, but it's going to be at least 3 people. I strongly recommend 5 people on your financial committees, and you will need to be part of that, making those decisions. I will say many times, nothing that happens in the financial committee should be secretive. All financial committee meetings are open to the public. They should be published ahead of time. You should publish notes afterwards. If you have something that's time critical, that is suddenly you realize, oh, we need to make a decision. You need on an ad hoc basis. This is not communicated to your populace. Make sure that you let the populace know, hey, guys, we met at practice on Tuesday night to approve an extra expenditure for our upcoming event. It was for this purpose, and it's this amount of money. As soon as you start being secretive or hidden with your money, you're going to lose the faith of your populace. I know there's a lot of confusion about financial committee meetings being open to the public. Only the financial committee members can vote, but anyone can sit there and listen. And I would strongly recommend asking any other members of the group if they have any opinions. Even if they aren't voting, they can still voice their opinion within reason, control your meetings. But that I can't tell you how important it is to keep all your financial decisions open to all of your populace. Okay, so finances. Contracts are a large part of finances. You, as the local seneschal, should sign all contracts for your group. Technically, one of your warranted deputies could sign a contract unless it's a critical thing where you have to be someplace in person and you can't be there, but your deputy can be. Sign your own contracts. Read them carefully, sign them. If you do not understand the contract, if you are not comfortable doing that, reach out to your regional, reach out to the Kingdom Seneschal, the upline. We can find someone to help read that with you and understand it. But as soon as you start getting lots of different people signing those contracts, you're not going to have that full understanding of exactly what it entails. And then please make sure that you're reviewing your financial policy and your budget in Q4 of each year for the upcoming year. That should be reviewed, voted on, signed, sent up line. I see in the chat how about an event steward signing the contract? Technically, they can, because the event steward is a warranted deputy to the seneschal. However, I suggest not doing that. I suggest both the local seneschal and the event steward reading that contract and then the local seneschal signing it. This has to do with the fact that your local seneschal is more permanent. Often these contracts are in excess. You may not even have the contract when you have the local, when the event deputy is assigned. And when push comes to shove, everything's going to come back around to the local seneschal. So sign your own contracts is my strong recommendation. Yes. And yes, the event deputy is a warrantable deputy seneschal. So they need to be a member, but they haven't taken this class. Your event deputies may or may not have taken the Seneschal Warranting class, the Exchequer Warranting class, and those sorts of things. That's my other reason why I suggest that the local Seneschal sign those contracts. And this may be a little bit different than kind of how it's done in some groups. I've seen problems with this. This is why it's my recommendation. Okay. Training deputies. Seneschals should also always think about training their replacements. You should have a emergency ER deputy, someone who, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, can step in and take over the job. But then you also should have someone you're training to be your replacement. The way I usually like seeing it is if your predecessor is your ER deputy for like the first year you're in office, they're aware of everything that's going on and stuff. Then you have someone you've identified to be your replacement. You start training them up about, a year or 6 months before you step down. You can go ahead and transition and have your deputy training to take over for you be your emergency. And that way your predecessor can kind of step back and not have that obligation over them. I do understand we don't always have that depth of volunteers in our group. It's so much easier when you have time for these transitions. All I can say is talk to your people, talk to your regional. If you're having problems getting volunteers, don't wait until you say, office is open, 30 days, I'm out of here, for someone to step in, because it's a whole lot harder for a new person to have the confidence to step in when they don't have that nice transition period. And it doesn't have to be a singular person training. You could have 2 people training, 3 people training, sort of feel out what it's like and see if it is something that they want to do in the future. Okay, award recommendations. Obviously, every member of the populace has an obligation, I feel, to submit award recommendations. As Seneschal, you'll have visibility into the work that people are doing that may not be particularly visible to everyone else. All awards can be submitted through the AMP and Steward Management Portal. We'll be having a class on that at 11 o'clock today. But keep an eye on the people who are helping you run the barony from behind the scenes, or the group from behind the scenes, and get those awards submitted. We also have a Kingdom law legal obligation to maintain a reference library. At this point with online, all of this is on the Ansteorra.org website. Go ahead and look through this list. Make sure you read these. Make sure you review them on a regular basis. Everything I'm presenting here is in the Seneschals handbook right here. Go ahead and take a look at that, especially if you're, I remember Nikki's mentioning something about Seneschals handbooks, where you're going to find that information. But be familiar with all of these names and know where to go and get them. Conducting opinion polls. This is not a very common thing for local Seneschal. Most of the opinion polls that we conduct are for candidates for transition of landed nobility, and that's never going to be handled by the local Seneschal, because that's your group. It's always going to be handled by the regional or the kingdom. There might be a possibility of having to conduct an opinion poll if you are, for example, discussing changing the nature of the group, whether you want to change a group from a Canton to a Shire or vice versa, or if you're wanting to transition the group to being a hamlet, or trying to upgrade a group to a barony, and you want to know how the populace feels about the change of status, your upline might ask you to conduct an opinion poll. There's a whole appendix in the Seneschal handbook about how to do this. If you ever have to do it, go read that appendix. Legal representative. You are the legal representative of your group. That means that you are signing those contracts. We should always have a legal representative on site during an event. So if you have a camping event, for example, and your event store is like, I can't camp, I'm going home, they need to ensure that they have someone on site that is a warranted Seneschal. You are also, we talked about contracts already. And I will say not all contracts are just event site contracts. We also have practice space rentals. Sometimes demos that we work with require contracts. Review those. Don't, just because someone else can sign it, you still need to understand it and read it. If but we do not expect you guys to be lawyers. If you don't understand, if you have a question, you said something just weird happened, ask your upline. We had a case at a event recently where someone's like, I don't actually know about SCCA's legal responsibility for how this happened. Or what do I do? I'm like, call me. My phone number's in the Black Star. I'm all over Facebook. Just message me and we can talk about this. Do not feel like you are an island. Escalate any questions, especially the legal questions, upline to your regional Seneschal, to your kingdom Seneschal. Dealing with modern authorities, you must call modern authorities if a alleged crime has occurred. This means if people get into a fight, there's a assault, if there is a sexual crime, adult victims have the right to make that report, ask if they want to call modern authorities, help them out. Anything pertaining with minors, report it, call it, physical abuse, sexual abuse, anything, if it is reported to you or observed by you at an SCA event or outside an event, frankly, inform modern authorities. Always let your upline know if you do have to pull in modern authorities. If there is, if someone gets seriously hurt and you have, and when we say modern authorities, it's not just police, it's also ambulances and these sorts of things. There's a serious injury, all the authorities. Anytime that you would, if you're just out in the park hanging out with your friends and something happens, deal with those. If it is a legal issue, if a normal person would look at this situation and say, oh my God, just because we're wearing funny clothes and playing our game doesn't mean that we don't pull in the legal authorities. It is typically recommended if you know that you're Seneschal and you're like, I might have to interact with modern authorities and you have the time, if it's not an emergency situation, change into modern attire. Introduce yourself by your legal name, not your SCA name. Try not to confuse the situation with some of our oddities within the SCA. Let's see. Pacing yourself and knowing when to step down. Here we go, warm and fuzzy again. This is a hard job, especially as a local Seneschal. I will say that local Seneschal is harder than regional Seneschal, absolutely. You're attending all of your practices, you're running meetings, you're dealing with phone calls, you're, always planning the next event. It's exhausting. Recognize when you need to step out. Our typical terms in office are 2 years. After 2 years, I ask that all my Seneschals go ahead and open their office for applications, even if they don't think that they have a designated successor coming up. If we need to extend you, we will extend you 6 months or a year in order to allow a successor to train up. But, let's not stay in office more than 2 years. If you need to step down early, do it. Zero judgment from any of us. We understand. Just let us know. Let's transition. Don't wait until I have to step out today. Say, I need to step out. I got a month or two. We can work with that. That's a whole lot easier. Be aware of your group's responsibility of membership and officership in order to maintain their status. Stay current on your officer reporting. Make sure that, especially your exchequer is current on their officer reporting, end of the year financial reports, all these sorts of things. Keep an eye on that exchequer. If you are hearing complaints about deposits or weird checks or anything like that, talk to them, talk to their upline, talk to your upline. Money is one of the easiest ways to screw a group up from a legal standpoint. You will have to have a minimum number of members and a minimum number of officers that's dependent on what type of group you are. Chart for that next. All practices need to be reported in your Seneschal reports, and waivers need to be sent in as necessary. Waivers are the responsibility of the Seneschal. I will go ahead and cover that in more detail later, but a lot of people seem to be under the impression that waivers are the responsibility of the marshals. Ultimately, it's the Seneschal's responsibility. The marshals may help the Seneschal with that job, but if they don't get sent in, the Seneschals, who's going to get talked to about it? You need to make sure that you have a newsletter and a calendar and a Black Star, depending on the level of your group. I think shires only have to publish a calendar. Baronies have to have a newsletter. Look in your chronicler stuff to ensure that you are providing that regular newsletter to the Black Star. While I was local Seneschal, I didn't have a chronicler for like 6 months. And I had to do the newsletter myself. I kind of phoned it in. It had the absolute bare necessities in there, but we had a newsletter in the Black Star every month. Here is the pretty chart to know how many officers and how many people you have to have in order to be a group. So barony, you have to have at least 35 paid members. You need to have a Seneschal, you need to have an exchequer treasurer, and you need to have 2 of marshal, some sort of marshal that's either rapier or chivalric, herald, minister of arts and science, chronicler, hospitaller. Some of these numbers have changed. I think one of these, like shires used to only have to have, I don't know. These have changed recently. I updated this chart with the latest versions of these. Keep an eye on it. I don't think any of our groups, at least not any of the ones I've seen recently, are near these limits. But also don't feel obligated to fulfill all of these offices. I know some of our smaller baronies are freaking out because they don't have a hospitaller right now. I'm like, you have a herald, you have 2 marshals, and you have a minister of arts and science, and you have a chronicler. You're good if you don't have a hospitaller for 6 months. Let your people take a rest. You have to file reports on a monthly basis. If you should also be receiving reports from your local officers. If they are not sending you those reports, go ahead and ask them about it. If it becomes an issue, talk to their regionals. I always ask as regional seneschal for my locals to CC me if they're having to go to, for example, the regional Knights Marshal and say, my local Knights Marshal, he's holding practices, but I'm not getting reports from him. Are you getting reports? Go ahead and look at that. And I'm going to back up for a second because I see our former Kingdom Chronicler has updated thing about newsletters. Only baronies and provinces are required to publish a newsletter at least quarterly. Check with the Kingdom Chronicler if you have questions about publication schedules for your particular group. Thank you. Let's see. So for reports, use the report form on the website. Do not just send in a random email. Do not post something on Facebook. Use that form. That means it gets to all the appropriate people. We alluded to this earlier. Use your Kingdom Provide email to discuss anything of lasting impact. Investigations, especially complaints, bullying complaints, money, anything that could be problematic, anything that just needs to be tracked. Use that Kingdom Provide email, and do not delete anything from that email account other than spam, I will say. So that if 5 years down the line, we have a similar complaint, and we need to be able to look at the history of what happened 5 years ago. I always say, do not feel obligated to wait until the next report to talk to your upline. Something weird happened at practice. We had a guy that came and started harassing people, and we ended up having to call the cops and get him removed. He wasn't an SCA member, but it happened at the practice. Drop me a phone call, drop me an email, let me know today, not in 3 weeks when your next report happens. And don't, any report's better than no report. Report on time, because the locals have to report, then the regionals have to report, and then the kingdom has to report. And if your chroniclers are late with their report, and so you don't file your report, then I have a hard time as regional filing my report, and the kingdom's waiting on my report. Just, submit your report and say, chronicler, I haven't heard from these people, or, no issues. And then if, they come back and it's just business as usual, it doesn't matter. And if there's an issue, just let us know. Just, hey, amendment, this happened. A little bit more information on reporting here. Reports are due on B6. I know that's changed. Link for where to do your reports. Big important information is that we need to know when any activity that might require waivers happened. That's going to be one of the most important parts of your report. So events, demos, fighter practices, even if you didn't have to sign waivers, include what dates this happened, what activities happened, and if waivers were signed or not. And I'm going to repeat what the Kingdom Seneschal just said in the chat for the previous slide. Anytime the authorities are called for any reason, please immediately notify your upline. Sooner is better. I invite all of you to put my phone number in your contacts. You can text me if you don't like talking on the phone. Just say, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm Seneschal of this group. Such and such happened. Go for it. And our emails, your regionals and your kingdom, the phone numbers are in the Black Star. You can always find out. Okay. Let's see. And as I said, your regional reports are dependent on those local reports, so get them in on time so that we can write our reports. Okay, regional Seneschal reports. We do a monthly report to the Kingdom Seneschal. We do a quarterly report. And then always keep your Kingdom Seneschal in the loop, ad hoc reporting, drop an email, drop a Facebook message, drop a phone call if there's anything that is interesting that needs to be known. Let's see, event reports are submitted by the group treasurer, but go ahead and review those. 10 days after the event, a event report needs to be submitted. And waivers need to be sent after events, after practices, after demos. I always say, do it before you even leave the practice. If you're at practice, at the end of the practice, when I was local, I would always walk over to wherever they're collecting the waivers. I'd take a picture on my phone, and I do it on my phone. And then it was none of the, oh, I'll do it when I get home. And then, oh, I need to, change clothes. I need to take a shower. I need to do all of these things. No, just do it right then and there. Don't worry about converting it to a PDF. A picture's fine. Just take a picture, as good a lighting as you can, and send that to the waiver secretary immediately. This being said, in the AMP class later today, they are doing a whole new thing for waivers. I don't know what that's going to look like. Some of this waiver stuff may get simplified. So we will all see and discover this in the AMP class later today. And your financial report. Again, the Exchequer is primarily responsible for this, but it's also your responsibility to ensure that they have done this, and you need to make sure that you're reviewing it. If you do not do this, this can put your group at risk. Waivers, I think we've already talked about waivers. They need to be signed by event attendees or combat participant. If it's a practice and someone's just watching, they do not need to sign a waiver. They need to sign a waiver if they're not a member of the SCA, or they do not have a documentation of their membership to the SCA. There's also a separate equestrian waiver if we have any equestrian activities. So if there are horses on site at an event, every single person needs to sign that equestrian waiver. The waiver secretary also has a website. You can also talk to them about what the current status. Are they missing any waivers for your group? Are you at risk? You should go and look at that, like once a quarter, once a month, especially if you know you've had problems, especially when you step up into office, maybe once a year at your roundtable. Go double check with the waiver secretary, make sure that you are in good shape. And thank you, Jillian, for posting a link to the waiver spreadsheet. And as our current waiver secretary, she's updating them right now. But yes, take this warranting as a good opportunity to go and check with the waiver secretary, see where you are. If you're stepping into being Seneschal, see where your waivers are before you actually step into the role. I had a Seneschal recently step in and immediately in their first month get hit by, oh my God, you guys are missing all of your waivers. And they're like, I've been in this job for 2 weeks. I don't know what happened 6 months ago. Have that be part of your transition. Let's see, we have, you'll hear a lot of different waiver types. Roster waiver, that's for events. That's anyone that doesn't have a proof of membership. It's the big list. You have a lot of different names on the same page. Minor waiver, any minors in attendance that do not have a proof of membership, they have to have that minor waiver signed. Medical authorization for minors must be notarized, but only is required for minors that do not have a parent there. And then the equestrian waiver is for everyone if there are horses on site. Always save a copy. We have semi-unlimited storage on our Google Drives. Get yourself a folder that says waivers 2008 waivers 2006, all the pictures of all your waivers, and that way it's easier to go back for figuring this out. If the waiver secretary comes and is like, I didn't get waivers for this date, here they are. Let's see, we've already covered most of this information. For practices, make sure that you have group name and the date that for the practice. I don't like putting multiple practices on one page. Just paper's pretty cheap. Just copy 50 pages and have them, put them in a folder, have them in your car so that you always have them. And it's a whole lot easier to track things. It's a whole lot easier to go, oh, I'll just send this next week. Just do it before you walk out that night. Take that picture, send it to the waiver secretary. And I always write at the top, email to waiver secretary at date, time, so that I know, looking in that physical piece of paper. And then, every 6 months, I'll double check, make sure that the waiver secretary shows I'm all up to date. I already have the emails. I know I have a copy of those. Then I can shred those pieces of paper. Okay, minors. I will say that this is actually a little bit in flux right now. I will tell you what I know for certain, and I will tell you what is in flux. I've been talking to our youth combat. So this first type of waiver, minors' consent to participate and hold harmless. This is what every parent signs when a youth under 18 person attends an event or anything like that. If you do not need this if you're an SCA member, as in the youth is an SCA member, but this is the standard waiver that we talk about with waivers. Medical authorization for minors. This is what is needed for a youth attending an event without their parent or guardian. It has to be notarized. So this is the one that says we can get medical treatment for a child who's there without someone to consent for them. The waiver necessary for youths to participate in SCA combat. It looks like some of the rules have changed here recently, and this is kind of a little bit more in the purview of the youth combat. I will be working with Maureen and with Kingdom Seneschal to figure out exactly where we are in the state of SCA on what waivers are needed for under 18 people to participate in combat. From a Seneschal point of view, you'll get asked this question a lot. I'm bringing a child who I am not the legal guardian for. What do I need? You need a copy of that minor's consent to participate and hold harmless, signed by the guardian, or a copy of the youth's proof of membership, their blue card. And you need a notarized, signed medical authorization for minors. Both of these forms with these terms are found on the website. Okay. I think I'm going to have to, sorry guys. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, what is an official practice? We keep talking about practices. We always have a conversation, what's official, what's not. It must be sponsored by a local group. It needs to be published in their newsletter or on their calendar. A warranted marshal or their designated deputy who is an authorized marshal and a local officer are required to attend. That can be the same person. That means if you have a rapier marshal for the local group, they can hold a practice all by themselves. Or you could have a authorizing rapier marshal and the local seneschal, they can hold a rapier practice together. If you're holding chivalric, you have to have a warranted chivalric marshal. If you're holding rapier, a warranted rapier marshal. Just because we have a warranted rapier marshal does not mean that we can have chivalric fighting, even if someone is a chivalric authorized field marshal. Okay, lost waivers. If you have lost a waiver, if you have problems with your waivers, talk to the waiver secretary. This if there's anything weird with waivers, talk to the waiver secretary and sort it out. Failures to submit waivers is one of those things that can put your group into jeopardy of being legal and not having the ability to hold practices. Let's see. I think I have an extra slide in here. As we talked about, what is an official practice? Remember that warranted marshals are not just field marshals. They are authorized marshals who are on the Earl Marshal's warrant roster. This is going to be your local marshals or deputies to the local marshals, regional marshals, and authorizing marshals. These are marshals who can authorize other people and things. These are all your people who are on the warrant roster. Here's some examples of what constitutes a practice. And I know that this tends to be something that people ask a lot of questions on. So I'm actually going to pause real quick and say, are there any questions on what constitutes an official practice?
Can we go back? Can we go back one slide? Sorry, I didn't finish reading the previous slide.
I don't know how to back up the slides. Okay, there. Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. You need to announce it. You are having the practice. Typically announce what you're scheduling in your local newsletter. If you have to adapt it, change a time, change a place because of weather, because of whatever, reflect that on your website, reflect that in your Facebook group, in Discord, whatever you can, whatever you typically are communicating with the people for. I see a couple raised hands on this. Lawrence?
Yes, just want to, go over a warranted marshal,
Yes.
because there was a question in my local group a while back about this idea of someone who's not a warranted marshal, but they are a field marshal, which was a little bit of a confusion there on whether or not they would count in order to hold practices.
That does not count. If someone is a field marshal and wants to do that and it's a problem, go ahead and assign them as a deputy to the local marshal. So, I'm a field rapier marshal. If I was listed as a deputy rapier marshal to the Bringalad rapier marshal, then I would be able to hold practices because my warrant falls under their warrant. But just as being a ad hoc field marshal, I'm not sufficient to hold practices.
Yes.
Just to clarify on that, if we have a field marshal and a warranted officer, does that count?
No. You have to have a warranted marshal for the discipline and a warranted officer of the group. And I know that this has been confusing and this isn't always how we have been doing it, but that is what is actually in our law.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was some confusion also. There's nothing to do with Seneschal's side, but I know there on the Rapier handbook that wasn't clear on the idea of warranted marshal, but with the new one that they're working on, that is very clearly stated, thankfully.
It is very oddly stated in a lot of these, which is why there's confusion, which is why I wanted to make sure that we hit on this and answered any questions. I had another hand up. It looks like it's down.
You answered my questions.
Fantastic. Reading Cornelius, it actually has been in there for a while. It just hasn't been enforced. But it's very easy to add deputies, which, is a very low effort way to kind of get around this rule. And the deputies, Nadia, deputies we're under the warrant of the local officers. They do not need their own warrant. That's specifically specified here. And I have a 5-minute warning, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and finish out this class. If you need to jump to another class, feel free. This will be recorded and you can watch the second half of it later once we get uploaded. If you're going over to the financial policy warranting class, that will also be recorded. So you can decide if you want to change here, watch that one later, or if you want to go to that one and watch the rest of this one later. I'm sorry, this is a lot of meat. Okay. Let's see. Events. Kingdom calendar events. This is anything that's on the kingdom calendar. This means that your nobility can award, give out awards, that you might have royal presence. If something's not on the kingdom calendar, we cannot actually give awards at it. Each group has one PED, perpetual event date, which means that it's a reserved weekend every year. If you want to hold an event that's not on your PED, you need to look at the other nearby events and make sure that you're not conflicting with them. And we have a kingdom calendar deputy that handles that. We will cover a lot more about events at the class at 1 o'clock if you want to hear more details on that. There is a form that requests for a date on a kingdom calendar that you have to send to the calendar deputy. If you're planning an event that's not on your PED, then you need to do that. When you are planning your PED, you also need to give the kingdom calendar deputy the information for your PED, which is going to be, where is your event going to be held? What's the website? What's Address? What's the date? What's the time? This is important, this 150 miles. If you are holding an event and your next door neighbor Barony is also holding an event that day, that's going to be denied. It's going to be too close. Those events are going to be too close, and we do not want them to conflict. But if you are in South Texas and one of the North Oklahoma groups is holding an event, you will be able to hold it on the same weekend. We can have multi-group calendar events. That means 2 groups join together to sponsor an event. It's pretty much the same rules. Just make sure that you are documenting in your bid and your agreement exactly what how you're going to handle money. So is one group putting forward all the money initially? What happens? Do they share it? Do they, what if there's a loss? Do they share the loss? Is there a percentage, 40-60, or is it 50-50? Just ensure that you have documented ahead of time how money's going to be handled. And I'm going to repeat, when we are talking about the 150 from event to event, it is from the site that the event is being held at to the site that the event's being held at, not from the hosting group or closest point of that group or its actual event site. We can have non-kingdom calendar events. Think like your local Yule. We cannot do awards or events of long-term significance at those. But you can host, I like calling these revels as opposed to events. If there is, still submit reports, NMR if you have site registration, waivers if they are signed, NMR, non-member registration fee. So, but usually I would say non-kingdom events are often free. Let's see. Then we have our kingdom events. This is when a local group hosts the kingdom event. So this is going to be your crown tourney. This is Kingdom ANS. This is Laurel's Prize tourney. This is Queen's Champion. If you would like to put a bid in for one of these, there's a form online, bid for Kingdom event. You will show profits with the Kingdom. That's in Kingdom law. And the Kingdom Financial Committee is the one that makes the decision on how that is the money on, or which event bid is chosen for that. Let's see, events, bids and planning. Again, we'll talk about this a lot more at 1 o'clock, but typically ask your populace to submit bids about 6 months in advance. You should have a budget, you should have an event steward, and at least some of your other roles filled, like your feast steward or gate, marshal it in charge, those sorts of things. Event stewards for deputy seneschals, they must meet the requirements for local stewards. You cannot have a 17-year-old being your event steward, though I would love to see that, because yeah. But legally they have to meet the requirements for local seneschals. Help them out. Make sure that they have mentors, make sure that they have someone to answer questions. Family maximum. This has kind of gone away since across the kingdom we seem to no longer be charging for youth most of the time. And so if you're not charging for youth, don't worry about saying a family maximum. But if you are charging for youth, you can still set a family maximum, and it is typically the equivalent of 3 adult member registrations. Family is defined by people who are related and live at the same address. This means, and I know that we have rat-holed on exactly what constitutes a family, and I'm going to delay that question to the Kingdom Seneschal. We might try and write something up a little bit more formally on exactly what constitutes a family. Let's see, groups, local financial committee should approve the budget. And make sure that you request your date from the Kingdom calendar and get that preliminary event ad, post it, put it to your webpage, link it to the online calendar. Always get that information out there. And when you are creating your Black Star ad, please look over that Black Star ad checklist with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that every single thing is checked off to really help your poor Kingdom Chronicler from having to go back and forth on getting the Black Star ad approved in there. You have to have your Black Star ad in at least 1 Black Star before every calendar event. And it must be submitted by the first month before the first of the month before the month of publication. So if it is being published in July, it needs to be submitted by June 1st. So if I have an event in August, I want to have it in the Black Star in July, I need to be submitting that ad in June, by June 1st. Non-member registration. Any time we have, we are collecting money for site fees. For non-members, we have to collect an extra, at this point in time, $10 for each non-member. That money goes straight to corporate, and that is typically handled by your exchequer and your gate coordinator. But this is another place you can get in trouble. If that money isn't going, isn't being sent up, then you can be in trouble. So this is one of those places where ensuring that other people are doing their jobs. I have a hand raised by Moonshadow.
The question is, if we have a free event, do we
Yes.
still have to,
Sorry, continue.
do we still have to collect the non-member surcharge?
No, you do not.
Okay.
Yeah. Or you only have to collect non-member surcharge if it costs money. Events. If you have combat of any sort at your event, you need to have warranted marshals there. And this may mean that you have kind of a marshal in charge that's just a field marshal, but you need to also have your local warranted marshal there. They should probably work together. This is typically why a lot of groups will have their local marshal be the marshal in charge, even if someone else is, handling the scenarios. If there has to be paperwork done, your warranted marshal is going to have to do the paperwork. Make sure that you have the equipment and the people. Do not just assume, especially the archery, missile weapons, equestrians. We have a bad habit of assuming that the people will do it. They may or may not have the capacity. Ask them. Simple. Same with previous winners of tournaments. If your champions typically, conduct the tournament, they may or may not be warranted marshals. So while they can hold a tournament, while they can figure out the format and run the list and that sort of stuff, they cannot do the paperwork to be the warranted marshal in charge at your event. Alcohol at events, it's site dependent, but always remember, SCA funds cannot be used to buy alcohol. They cannot be used to buy ingredients to make alcohol. And any situation that looks like the SCA is providing alcohol, no, we do not do that. And I will add that be aware if any prize baskets contain alcohol. Not all of our winners are 21, and I know that has been a problem in the past. So I would actually discourage or be very cautious about prize baskets with alcohol because of that. Okay, insurance. The SCA has liability insurance, and many sites, including like practice sites, might require the proof of that insurance. I know that Beatrix just uploaded that to the Seneschal Facebook group, I believe, in December. We should have a new one for 2026 here, probably by the end of the month. If you ever can't find that or don't have it, please email Kingdom Seneschal and they can get it to you. If a site owner wants to be listed as additionally insured, so basically their name specifically on that insurance document as opposed to the generic insurance document, it will cost a little bit of money and it has to be ordered 6 weeks in advance. So that should be one of those things that you figure out very early when you are signing the contract with your site, whether you need to order that additional insurance. Equestrian insurance is required if horses are there, and it has to be obtained 45 days prior. If you don't do it 45 days prior, suddenly the cost goes from a little expensive to ridiculously expensive, and pretty much you can't do it. It also has to be ordered from corporate. There are some details about equestrian insurance that you can have a single request listing multiple days. So you can do one insurance document for your quarterly equestrian practice for the entire year, for example. And if equestrian insurance has been changing a lot recently, and in the chat I see that if you are dealing with equestrian insurance, it's probably best to double check and make sure that everything that you've done in previous years is the same. So talk to your regional seneschal, talk to Kingdom Seneschal, and let's double check and make sure that everything is up to date. Taverns and merchants. If you have merchants, people selling things at events, They cannot imply that SCA is involved. That means you cannot accept donations. You cannot advertise that you're accepting donations to give to the SCA. State of California or Oklahoma, they have to get a tax permit. They are responsible for their own tax permit. And in Oklahoma, set prices are taxable. Donation is not. Double, especially for our Oklahoma groups. I will say I'm based in Texas, so I'm not as familiar with the Oklahoma tax regulations. Oklahoma groups, if you're having merchants, double check how Oklahoma manages taxes. Events, animals. We in the SCA do allow animals at our events. Animals are never allowed at gate. Basically, this is a opt-in. Everyone has to go to gate, and if you do not want to be around animals, you cannot avoid gate. So no pets at gate, please. Pet owners have to be responsible, must clean up after their pets, and should maintain vaccination. We do not check vaccinations, but they should maintain vaccination. Horse owners must provide proof of negative cognitive test, however. If the site owner does not permit pets, then we can say service animals only. Service animals, we can absolutely, we always should specify service animals only, and follow federal state laws. Do be aware that some sites are legally allowed to exclude service animals, some churches, for example. So that's something you should check if you are signing a contract with a church or other site. If they exclude service animals, then you have to respect that. And you can also choose to not contract with a site that excludes service animals. You can ask if the animal is a service animal, but that is the extent. There's no test, there's no paperwork, there's no license. If they say it's a service animal, you have to respect that. But if the animal is aggressive or destructive, you can ask the owner and animal to leave. Children, parents are responsible for their kids. Keep them within earshot if they are younger than teenagers. And parents cannot leave the site unless they have provided that waiver that we talked about earlier. Younger than teens are not suitable babysitters. And minors cannot run gate or be seneschal or treasurer. They can help at gate, but they cannot run gate. Children's activities, you always have to have 2 adults, unrelated by blood or marriage, and one must have an appropriate background check. And any children under 5 have to be accompanied by the parent to participate in children's activities. And there's a whole class on youth and family, which is the new name for the Ministry of Children. So if you are interested in this or worried about this, please attend that. There's a lot of details. We talked earlier about how waivers and monies are ways for groups to get in trouble. Inappropriate managing of youth activities and minors is another good way to get in trouble. So be very aware of this. Demos and public relations. The Seneschal has to approve all demos. Always encourage your people to dress their best. You know, we are putting on more of a show than our typical events. We are the entertainment. We're not just part of the activity. Gather new member names. Go to our Shadowlanes class is about how to run demos. They have some great ideas, especially QR codes, things like that, about how to attract and maintain contacts with new members. Fighters have to have proof of membership. They have to be authorized, and they must sign a waiver if they are not proof of member. We'll talk a little bit more about how to get your information out in the newspapers and media. We do have a media liaison at the kingdom level if you ever have questions about this. And I hate that this has to be said, but it has to be said. An SCA fighter should never strike a member of the public. Even if they say, yes, I want to do it, and they put on armor, don't actually hit anyone at a demo. That is not an appropriate form to be authorizing a fighter or teaching them how to fight. If they are interested, you can show them, you can do slow work, you can put a waster in their hand and show them how to do those things. But members of the public should never be actually hitting or being hit. I mean, I guess they can hit our fighters. I know people do that sometimes, but they should never be getting hit during a demo. Don't leave live steel. Never allow the audience to handle live steel. People always forget how sharp things are. And this includes things like, oh, look at my pretty belt knife that's out on the table that for people to touch and look at, our pretty garb and stuff. If that's a belt knife, if that's sharp, yeah, don't just put it out on the table. Horses, you have to have equestrian insurance and waivers have to be signed. So if your demo is going to have SCA variety horses, make sure you double check all those rules. And as always, if there are any injuries at demos, contact the Kingdom Seneschal and use your local hospital, your regional Kingdom hospital, or and other nearby local hospitalers to help with the influx of new people after especially large demos. Mundane media. You can, we will sometimes have people come in and do articles. When we have events, we'll have people sometimes just drive by and see practices. Make sure that you or your seneschal or your hospitaler or your land nobility are kind of when media shows up, you go be the pretty face in front of the TV camera or talking to the reporter. Go ahead, and if you do talk to a reporter or anything, let the Kingdom media liaison know. And use your modern names. You can always say, oh, my name's Christine Calkins. In the SCA, I'm known as Dame Nicaise Montpetit. And they will often want to put both of those names, but don't present yourself with just your SCA name. This last point, about 3 to 4 weeks to approve requests to film, that's not when someone's coming in and doing a little 30-second blip for the local news. That means we're going to be filming a big thing for a produced thing. So if you are going to have someone that wants to come in and take film as part of their documentary on the Ren Fair culture in Texas and how it relates to the other LARPs and stuff, and this is a big project and they want to come in and they arrange to film, yes, that is when we need to be talking to society media relations officers and those sort of things, not for local news coming and getting 30-second clips of things going on. Is there any questions on mundane media? No. Okay. Approved platforms. This is constantly changing. Right now, we have Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Discord, YouTube. Work with the Kingdom social media officer if you want to explore any of those that you do not currently have, or if there are other newly emerging social media platforms that you would like us to explore. And then in the handbook, at the very end of the handbook, there's a few appendices that I want to highlight. Primarily, if you are interested in doing these things, go read that handbook. So Appendix A is how to conduct a polling, primarily for regionals, but local seneschals might need it. I see Kingdom Seneschal raised a hand.
Yes, I just wanted to say that sometimes we have a newer group type of group. It's called a hamlet. And one of the instances of where a local seneschal might need to do an opinion polling is one of the steps for being considered a hamlet is that the seneschal polls the populace to see how they feel. So that would be an example of a polling that a local seneschal might have to conduct.
Absolutely. Polling can be conducted from matter other than land and nobility transition, for example, considering changing the status of a group, changing a group to a hamlet. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Then we have a whole appendix for planning for the media. One of the very cool things that is in this appendix is ad templates for advertising, demos, fighter practices, etc. If you want to go to your local websites or Facebook groups and advertise your fighter practices or your guild meetings, there's some really great standard verbiage, and we recommend that you use these templates. And then always report any media coverage. You know, we want to see the cool things that are happening. You know, for example, a reporter comes to your event, writes an article, let your upline, let the Kingdom media liaison know of these things. And finally, there's a whole section on what your regional seneschals do. So I know mostly here we have local seneschals, but if you're ever interested in becoming a regional seneschal, please read through this Appendix C of the handbook. And finally, if you are watching this on YouTube and you need to now report that you have watched this and that you are now warranted, recognize that you are responsible for everything here, as well as everything in the latest version of the handbook, and go to this tiny URL, ANSTSEN warrant, or click on this QR code, and this should take you to a Google form, which will go to your Kingdom Seneschal to see who has taken this class. We can stop the recording now.